Welcome to the Learning Reinvented Podcast, brought to you by myself, James Politilo.
And Katie Godden from The Learning Effect. There are lots of learning podcasts out there, so we wanted to do something slightly different. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the recent recommendations of the Digital Badging Commission in the UK and their implications. James, you recently attended the event where these recommendations were unveiled. Can you tell us a bit more about them?
Thanks, Katie. The Digital Badging Commission was convened by UFA Vocational Tech Trust and the RSA, which is the Royal Society of the Arts, and that was in May 2024. And they brought together leading experts from across higher and further education, commerce and technology. And the intention was to broaden the understanding, development and adoption of digital badges by accrediting organisations and employers. So that was their original remit. And their stated aim that they have produced is to build a new consensus around the development and deployment of digital badges and micro-credentials, transforming skills and qualifications in the UK. So that was the commission itself, and I attended an event on the 13th of October 2025 in London, where they unveiled their recommendations. It's quite interesting, as I think it's really difficult to look at their recommendations without looking at what they're trying to achieve. So if I go back to the report, they state that digital badging is a solution to a widespread and widely acknowledged problem. The UK is rich with talent, energy and creativity, but too little of that is acknowledged by the skills and qualifications system. This means that many people find themselves denied opportunity because they cannot prove or articulate what they know, understand or can do. This makes for an unacceptable waste of human potential and of national opportunity. The report itself contains lots of valuable information, and I would recommend that our listeners take some time to digest it. If you have any role in learning, I think the points raised are really relevant, regardless of which country you're in, as the challenges it identifies and some of the opportunities and solutions are not UK centric. We've put a link to the report in the show notes below the episode. So yeah, I would wholeheartedly recommend that our listeners go in and take the time to have a look.
So what are the Digital Badging Commission's recommendations?
However, I don't think that the report itself covers all of the things, and some areas of it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. For example, even the introductory statement, I don't think that badging is the solution to that problem that they outline. I think badging is part of the solution, but there's a lot more to it that relates to the intervening steps around skills, experience, contextual application, and that's where the real work happens in being able to unleash talent and creativity. My other criticism of the report is it's far too focused on education and education standards and not really what does happen in a workplace. The benefits identified, whilst valid and potentially useful, are not really going to move the dial. So the report identifies three areas: reduction in duplicated training costs, reduction in time to hire, enhanced reskilling and retention. Do those really play into the bigger problem identified in the report of the UK is rich with talent, energy and creativity, but too little of that is acknowledged by the skills and qualification system? I'm not entirely convinced those things do.
These are things that we talk about regularly, but I agree. I don't think we're going to suddenly unlock the talent and creativity of the UK workforce. Will the recommendations achieve this goal, do you think?
There are three recommendations, and each is probably worth an entire episode on its own, but let's quickly run through them now. The first recommendation is digital badging and credentials should be integrated into post-16 formal education and training. And I think that certainly has a part. If we think about trying to change some of the challenges that digital badging faces, some of those are around awareness. We know from talking to our customers, just talking to people in the general population, the awareness of what a digital badge is, what a good digital badge is, how they operate, the part they play is misunderstood by people in learning, HR, business, and beyond in the rest of society. So getting that basis in place, so ensuring that people have from the very first type of qualifications they do, and the commission were quite clear they would love to have started below 16, but there's so much politics in all the areas. They were saying their recommendations to start at the age of 16, which would mean that if you're leaving school with, in the UK, GCSEs or A levels or T levels, V levels, whatever, the qualification happens to be at the time, that those should be recognised and enshrined into a digital badge. So that does a number of things. It creates an expectation and a cadre of things that go on the roadmap in, in terms of they set out for people coming into the workplace that these are normal things that people should have. So you've got a whole generation of people that this will be normal for. Again, talking 16-year-olds as they then work their way up. That then ripples into their peer group. So, their connections, their stakeholders. So whether that's their parents, whether that's anyone else, their friends, their relatives. So that has a ripple effect of people starting to understand these things as they come through. You then again will have from the employer point of view, which is often seen as a block to really embracing digital badging, that employers will have to start to understand digital badges because they're going to see people coming and presenting these things rather than a GCSE certificate or whatever else they've been used to in the past. So it will have some level of changing expectation of what's normal. So I think there's some good thinking behind that one. The second recommendation is around a national skills wallet. So it says a national skills wallet should be established that supports lifelong learning using interoperable open standards. Now, I agree around the interoperable open standards because we know, but again, not everyone does, that there are digital badges and not all digital badges are equal because some follow the open standards, which require them to be portable. So they're not locked down into one system, which again is a block to skills development and progression, because if your skills training and everything else is locked into a proprietary system owned by your employer, ex-employer, or whatever, it means your mobility and skills and some of the points that we raised earlier or the commission raised earlier around reduction in training time, because you've not got someone having to go to a new employer and redo something they've already done just because that record is not transferable. So there is some benefit to that. I'm less sold by the need to create a national wallet apart from out of practicality. So in the report, and again, when the commission were presenting this, they were talking almost about the inter-UK devolution of skills into Scotland or Wales or England, and that we can't have a devolved wallet within each of those things because it makes no sense. But I also think that we operate in a global market, so even a UK wallet does a job within the UK, but it's quite parochial and looking within our own borders rather than that the open standard should be open. And I get that they will try and put a wallet in that becomes the standard for the UK, and everyone is given one as part of reaching an age, aligned with the national insurance number, or people coming in, and there'll probably be some alignment with the digital ID card and the one government account. So there seems to be trying to drive some linked inness or linked upness to that process. However, those synergies and whether that's really going to drive the innovation, it might just be that wallet, or it may serve the majority who only ever pick up GCSEs or a few government issued credentials. But there are people who are going to probably want far more from their wallet than a standard government issued one would provide. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in terms of portability, wallets, digital CVs, digital portfolios, and all of the other things that can derive from that initial starting point. So that one, they can probably just go with whatever's out there. But the practicality is if they're going to issue GCSEs, A levels, etc., they've got to put them somewhere. So that to me feels like the driver for that one. The last one, and I think the one that's going to be most sticky, is a national registry for digital credential quality assurance should be established. And this is derived from a challenge people see around the trust around digital badges and what's been issued, who it's been issued by, what standards is it aligned to, is there any quality assurance behind that? And again, this one seems very education centric to me because this need to verify and qualify things. How do we do this? And was having some conversations afterwards, and people were talking about the system of vouching. So where someone vouches for your ability, or in the past, digital ID was not checked against an ID, but you still need someone to vouch, someone of a relevant standing to say James is James or Katie is Katie. So also in terms of when people have gone back previously for references, or whether that be a personal reference or a career reference, they've gone back and asked people to vouch to say they're of good character, or they worked here, or they have the skills and ability to do this role. So we need to understand how that moves forward, and how we don't just have educational standards in there, but we have ways of attesting to people's skills and abilities through some level of assurance, whether that's checking they've done those things, work evidence upload, testimonies, reassurance from other people. Any of those things can help provide that through to what we're looking for from this system. There's also a drive for there to be a set of standards that are baked in there around skills. And again, I think this is the biggest challenge, because how do we solve the skills taxonomy? People can't agree on levels of skills. They can't agree on definitions of skills. There's still competency arguments, skill arguments. How do you play out context to understand I may be skilled at communicating when I'm talking to board, but I can't talk to a set of 14-year-olds, or I can't speak to frontline staff, or whatever it happens to be. So there's huge amounts of work to go there, and I think this is the one that may become most sticky, and it'd be really interesting to see how it does play out.
Sounds like there's some good thinking contained within the report, but still lots to do.
Yes, the issuing of the report means the Commission has now done its job, which is interesting, typical consultancy approach. We've done our job. Here's our recommendations. We can walk away. And it's now up to others to pick up that baton.
How this plays out in real business and organisations is going to be critical. I'd love to hear from our listeners. How are you embracing digital badges? What hurdles have you faced? And what do you think would help? Thank you for listening to this episode of the Learning Reinvented podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you've not already done so, please follow our podcast. And if the learning effect can help you and your organisation, please do get in touch. You can find both James and Katie on LinkedIn, and our contact details are in the show notes below.